Join us on a journey that will change your life. A journey that will inspire you to keep a flame in your heart burning with memories. This is a remarkable voyage through the European history from medieval times to the horrors of World War II to the liveliness of the present day. This is an expedition of exquisite experiences, a Jewish heritage discovery of deep meaning and profound suffering, but also of cultural pride, love, and splendor. We begin in Prague, the city of 1,000 spires. With its amazing architecture, imposing Hradčany Castle, peaceful Vltava River, and unique craft beer. We admire the Cathedral of St. Vitus, the Old Royal Palace, and the Golden Lane, the very spot where the alchemists lived during the search for the Philosopher's Stone. We follow the road that takes us to the Malá district, or Little Prague, and enjoy its narrow cobbled streets that lead to the Charles Bridge. Crossing this iconic bridge, we find ourselves in the Old Town. Here, we will see the medieval astronomical clock, visit the cemetery and the Old New Synagogue, explore the Jewish quarter and learn about its history, stroll the Wenceslas Square, and just revel in this lively European city. Our next stop presents us with the grandeur of Vienna. We are serenaded in the city of Mozart and Beethoven. We absorb the art and philosophy and feast our eyes on the grand palaces, the Schönbrunn Palace where the Habsburgs spent their summers, at the Belvedere and the Hofburg Palace with their lush gardens. We spend time in the famous coffee houses and drink in the atmosphere and the fascinating history. We admire the extravagant architecture and elegant interiors. The opulence and culture of this city hearken to a time when a thriving Jewish population, 10 times what it is now, called it home. A drive along the city's main boulevard, the Ringstrasse reveals the Opera House, the Museum of Art History, and the Natural History Museum. The Parliament, City Hall, National Library, and many other architectural and historic landmarks are included in this tour. Our final destination is Budapest, the Queen of the Danube, a city that became one from two, Buda and Pest, divided by a mighty river but connected by 7 magnificent bridges. We feel the ghostly presence of nearly 500,000 Jewish people who perished here. We see their reflections in the still waters of the Danube, and their shoes that line its banks, and in the twinkling lights of the grand architectural wonders ablaze at night. What a sight. The massive illuminated Parliament building, the Fisherman's Bastion with its neo-Romanesque lookout terraces and promenade offering spectacular views of the city, the Hero Square and Market Hall. Across the river to the Buda Hills, we see the colorfully tiled rooftops and stunning Matthias Church, the neo-Baroque Royal Palace in the Castle District and the majestic Basilica. We rejoice in the cosmopolitan culture of art, opera, modern dance, and the great performance halls, and in the newly refurbished Jewish Museum. We visit splendid synagogues named after the streets, regal remnants from the time when 1/3 of the city was Jewish and it was known as Judapest. We wander the now trendy Jewish quarter and artist section, home to poets, writers, musicians, and painters. And finally, we absorb the old world charm of luxury hotels, boutique shopping, scrumptious Hungarian goulash, and mouth-watering desserts. Our custom trips are drawn from a menu of enticing experiences with something interesting for everyone. This is Michael Gelber, CEO, iWorld of Travel, inviting you to experience another Memories Beyond destination. iWorld of Travel. Expect more. Do more.
Well, good afternoon or good morning, wherever you're checking in from. We appreciate you joining our webinar series featuring the Jewish heritage, which is very personal to us, our family, our company. As you know, our company has been around for 50 plus years, and really our focus since day one has been in establishing tourism to Israel and the Middle East while growing our reach globally, as well as focusing on faith-based travel. iWorld of Travel is a company that is devoted 100% to the travel advisor community. And we honor my father, not only in carrying his legacy forward and the traditions that he established and running this company for over 4 decades, but we're also committed to ensuring that everybody's experience is going to create memories beyond moments. These are memories that my father was always insistent upon, that stay long after the journey is ended and remain in your heart and soul as you come back. Next slide, please. We have changed up the presentation today. I'm not going to spend time talking about our company because this is a very important presentation that has a little more length to it. Anticipate about a 60 to 75 minutes with questions opened at the end. If you want to post them at the bottom, that would be terrific, and then we will address them. Today with us in the background as support is Zahava Baton, and certainly not in the background. She's been with the company for over 30 years and really focusing on global sales, VP of global sales, and has hosted a lot of tours, has led a lot of tours internationally around the world on faith-based. Alida Paljevec, who is product development and European specialist that has come on board and created new products for us, our small luxury group departures, and we'll talk a little bit about that at the end, and just a great addition to the team. And our host and our speaker today, which we could not be any more proud. I know my father, as he looks down upon us, has also got a smile with a cigarette and espresso in his hands. So happy that Jacob Shishon has decided and to join us. Jacob, just real quickly, has been first and foremost a tremendous friend to my father, the Gelber family, and the company. And a lot of what he has done with our company has really guided us in some of the products and the itineraries and the influence in terms of how we created many of the programs we've done in the past and the things that we like to focus on that we feel would be of the utmost importance for you and your clients as they travel. Real quickly on Jacob, I could spend probably 30 minutes at least talking about him, but he speaks 15 languages that I know of, has been to 107 countries, 66 countries that he's led tours on 6 continents, and he's just a gentleman and a scholar, and again, we're very pleased to have him, and he will be leading a couple of our Jewish heritage programs as we get through. So without any further ado, Jacob, thank you for joining us, and it's your show.
Thank you so much. Welcome everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you might be. Our trip takes us to the realm of what used to be the Austro-Hungarian Empire. The map of Europe has changed many times, but 100 years ago, a little over 100 years ago, this huge empire occupied big chunks, big parts of the continent. And of course, it was broken later on following World War I, and after World War II, there were changes. And then after the fall of communism, even more changes. But our trip today will take us around this area from Prague to Vienna to Budapest. I think I'll get the pointer going, forgot to do it earlier. Okay, we begin at the Czech Republic. Today, half of what used to be Czechoslovakia, a little more than half in the size of population, but look at these significant figures. Today, maybe 3,000, before World War II, almost 400,000, and you can see the result of the Holocaust. Almost 250,000 perished during that time. The story begins even before the war breaks in 1938, when Germany annexed the Sudetenland, the area surrounding the Czech land. The Czech lands usually we refer to will be Bohemia, Moravia, and Slovakia, with parts of Silesia in this area. And following the annexation of the Sudetenland later on, even before the war started, the world has agreed to a compromise, and big parts of this land, the Bohemia and Moravia area, were annexed and became a part of what they call the protectorate, ruled and occupied by Germany. We drive through most magnificent countryside with some beautiful castles and some beautiful forest and lakes and what have you, and we come to the most beautiful of them all, which is the city of Prague. Another city which is on both sides of the river. In this particular case, it's the Vltava River. And as we heard, the city has endless spires, and wherever you will look, the skyline is dominated by the spires of the churches, the sanctuaries, the shrines, the cathedrals, and various other towers, turrets, and what have you. Everybody flocks to the main square, which is the Old Town Square. It is the most visited part of the city, and lots of the action in the city takes place. Luckily, this city was not bombed, was not destroyed in the war, And actually, the years of communism meant that there was no development. So somehow, all these gorgeous buildings from 17th, 18th, 19th century have survived. And it is a very, very large square surrounded by buildings as we saw and as we will see from various periods. In the middle of a square is a monument to Jan Hus. The Hussite movement was a reform movement preceding the reforms introduced by Luther or Zwingli or Calvin. Unfortunately, Jan Hus, he was a Czech, who led this reform, was not spared, and he lost his life on the stake. Every hour on the hour, thousands of people will flock around the main town hall building to see the astronomical clock. Every hour on the hour, the music plays, the chimes go, and the figures around the clock begin to move. The two windows open, and we have a procession of saints, and you can see the crowds, everybody is pointing at them, admiring not only the movement. The clock doesn't only show the time, it shows the day, the month, the stellar compositions, and these figures between wisdom, music, art, courage, and so on, they also move along with the music. Look at the miser and look at vanity. On the other hand is wisdom. So we have these figures which move in a beautiful sync. The architecture will show us many different styles, beginning with the late Gothic, through Renaissance, and then obviously to Baroque and Rococo, and then Neo-Gothic, whatever. The buildings will be decorated by many different things. A typical artwork from the 18th century will be this graffito, removing an outer layer to expose the lower layer of plaster in different shapes and colors. 19th century will feature, of course, different buildings, and it's so interesting. Each and every building has a story. This one was the office, the headquarters of a fire insurance company. So even look at the image decorating the roof of the firefighters from the end of the 19th century. Another building is a bank. This is the Landsbank. So again, we have scenes from the countryside decorating and adorning the building. This is the image of Jan Hus right in the main square. And it's quite an interesting story, the Hussite movement. We will now travel across the river and begin our exploration of the Castle Hill. We'll see the Strahov Monastery with one of the most beautiful libraries in the world. Some people will even say it is the most beautiful one. We'll go next door to the Loreto Monastery, if nothing else, to marvel at this story. This was a countess she hailed from Poland, from Krakow. That was her wedding dress, which was embroidered with 6,222 diamonds. After the wedding, she has donated all these diamonds to create this amazing monstrance. Nothing like it anywhere in the world. So we'll drop inside and pay a visit. We'll continue visiting the Castle Hill. The next item, as we walk down from the top, halfway down the hill, is the Presidential Palace, formerly a royal palace. We'll enter the Presidential Palace and hear about the regime, the government, the way of government nowadays. We'll walk through the amazing corridors and halls of this fantastic mansion. Again, different elements, different periods, different styles of decoration, and everything is absolutely impressive. How about this place for a reception hall with the beautiful chandeliers hanging from the top? As we heard in the movie, the most dominant feature here, the St. Vitus Cathedral, a cathedral which is still actually being built for 800 years. Most of it is done, but it's an ongoing task to maintain and to keep it up, and it's beautifully decorated inside and out. The stained glass windows, some of them are as late as the 1930s. This happens to be Alphonse Mucha, who has done these beautiful windows with this color. Yet you look at centuries old mosaic embedded with gold on the facade on the outside of the cathedral. From the cathedral, we'll go to this narrow lane, which is actually the barracks, the walls, the ramparts of the old town. And in the rampart, they had some small rooms which were dwelling places for the soldiers, for the officers. The most famous of them all is house number 22. This is where Franz Kafka thought he will find peace and quiet away from the maddening crowd where his house used to be. Actually, he was born right on the main square and his house was not far from there. He came to seek here peace and quiet. Now, of course, it's one of the noisiest places in town. We'll keep coming downhill from where we started and we come to what is called the lesser town before we get on the bridge to cross into the old town. Before we get on the bridge, we'll see St. Nicholas Church, a most incredible example of beautiful Baroque art, the creation of the Jesuits in the attempt of restoring the wealth and the attraction of the Catholic Church after the reform movements were dropping out. This is an amazing bridge, the Charles Bridge. In order to make sure it will survive, and somehow they managed to do it, they consulted astrological, not astronomical, but astrological wisdom, and they picked up 1:37 a.m. and the year was, of course, 1357. I don't know what did that help, but the fact is that the bridge is still up and is still being visited by hundreds of thousands of people at any given time. There are 30 groups of statues on top of the bridge, each telling a fascinating story between royalty, saints, historical figures, and the light is absolutely wonderful at the early morning or at twilight, adds a lot to the atmosphere of walking on this bridge. This is a very unusual one. It's a crucifix with Hebrew writings. Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts, with the story that we were never able really to confirm about why did they pick this particular Jew, got all of his money and used it to make these gold inscriptions on the cross, on the crucifix. A gunpowder tower that's already in the old town, and above the old town we have the St. Wenceslav square, that is Wenceslav riding the horse. I think many of you will know the song about the good King Wenceslav. Behind it is the National Museum, a beautiful and very inspiring and impressive structure. And right below the statue stretches this Wenceslav square. Actually, it is like a main street, which is hundreds of years of age, which is quite amazing that 700-800 years ago, they should dedicate such a large area for a street and a marketplace. Comes 19th, 20th century, we have the municipal house. Again, look at these decorations, the colors, the vivid colors, the mosaics, the stained glass windows, and all the elements, the welding and the wrought iron for the balconies and the statues and the lamps and the light fixtures. Quite interesting. We keep walking in the old town, which offers lots of excitement today. If you want to sit down and have a cup of coffee, relax with a beer in one of the pubs, come at night for a lovely dinner or just for snacks or desserts, sampling on local cuisine and big-time international cuisine, whether it's street food or casual or very formal dining, if that's what you want to do. Of course, like anywhere in this part of the world, beautiful patisseries serving some beautiful baked stuff, some cakes and cookies and whatever. So that is something that you shouldn't walk in when you're hungry, because you'll end up, you can imagine what you're going to do. So really a fascinating nightlife scene, a fascinating culinary scene. And we begin now our exploration of the Jewish Quarter. The Jewish Quarter of Prague is the second most visited part of the city after the Old Town Hall Square. Actually, it occupies an area which is not far. That is the town square, the Old Town Square. And this area used to be the Jewish quarter. Only in the 19th century, many of the houses were falling apart, and they needed the place because there was a demand for real estate development. So they kept just a few of the synagogues and a few of the public houses and the Jewish cemetery, which we can see here. And we are going to explore the Jewish Museum because it really offers a fantastic experience. The new houses built in the end of the 19th and 20th century over the places where the Jewish quarter used to be surround in this magnificent architecture, and look at the decoration, the statues, the sculptures. They surround some of the oldest buildings in the city. This, for example, is the old new synagogue. Imagine 1270. And except for a short period during World War II, it never stopped functioning. The oldest continuously used synagogue in the continent. The interiors are quite interesting with the inscription on the wall. Very simple, neo-Gothic style, of course, the end of the 13th century. But the big claim to fame belongs to the story of the Golem. Here is Rabbi Law. We are going back to the 17th century. And the legend says that he has constructed a figure made out of clay. He took a parchment and wrote down the sacred name of God, put it into the head of the figure, and it became alive. And it was like a servant. It was like pumping the water and chopping the wood and carrying the stuff. And unfortunately, one Saturday night, when he usually would have removed the piece of parchment from the head of the figure, he forgot to do it. The figure went berserk, and come Saturday night, they broke him into pieces, and the remains were put into the attic of the synagogue. This figure you'll find all over the place. They have mugs and cups and figurines and whatever. Everybody talks about the Golem there. Across the street, we have the funerary hall, and that is where we will begin our visit to the cemetery. Now it is a most unusual cemetery. You see, they had a limited area right on the banks of the Vltava River. They couldn't grow it any further. It was right on the embankment. So what they had to do over the centuries, they would bury their dead, put a layer of dirt, of earth, and bury somebody on top. And each time they'll pull the tombstones up and up. So look at what you have now. A maze. In some locations, we were able to determine, imagine, 11 layers of burials over centuries. So it's spooky, talking about the current state of mind we're all gearing for in the next few days, but it's quite fascinating. We see some elaborate tombs. These are like big monuments dedicated to some great sages. In this particular one, this is Mordechai Meisel. He was the mayor of the town in the 16th century. This is the Jewish town hall. Look at the way it was decorated. A regular clock with Latin characters, the digits, and this one is with Hebrew writing, and the clock goes from right to left, unlike the other one, which goes like all the watches and clocks we know. Meisel built also a magnificent synagogue, which today is part of the Jewish Museum. The Germans started looting all over the place, especially into Jewish property, and there were quite a few people with not only money, but very good taste who stored and harbored some magnificent artwork and especially beautiful pieces of Judaica. The Germans were looting and collecting from hundreds of communities and locations and bringing the artifacts from the biblical scrolls to some ritual items, and they were going to create what they called a museum of a deviated race which was extinct. Luckily, they didn't manage, but we were able to see lots of the collection. Just to draw your attention, 220,000 items were stored in these synagogues here in anticipation of the construction of the Jewish Museum, or as they were going to call it, the Hitler Museum. 8,000 curtains covering the Holy Ark, where we keep the scrolls of the Bible. Some of them embroidered with gold, some of them embroidered with pearls. Imagine, 17th, 18th century. So just 8,000 of the curtains and mantelpieces covering the scrolls of the Bible. Next, we go to another interesting synagogue. This synagogue has the names of the 78,000 Jews of Prague alone who perished in the Holocaust. In red, you will find the last name and then the private names of these, first names of these victims with the date of birth and, if known, the day of death. Prague did not have a ghetto. Tens of thousands of the Prague Jews were transferred a few miles away to the small military fort of Theresienstadt. And this is where the ghetto of Prague was, which later on harbored many more Jews who were brought from various countries, from Denmark, from Holland, from Germany and Austria. And that was supposed to be like a token. That was supposed to demonstrate how wonderful the Germans were treating the Jews. They were not allowed to pray, but some Danish Jews made the point of creating a clandestine prayer room in a basement of one of the buildings. And they said, our brethren of Israel are suffering. Please, with all of what you are suffering, we did not forget you. Please do not forget us. May our eyes witness you return to Zion in compassion. And guess what happens next? The Swedish Red Cross, enticed and encouraged by the Danish king, sent these white buses which rescued thousands and thousands of Jews from concentration camps before it was too late. We're already in the summer of 44, fall of 44, winter of 45. Today we visit Terezin and we have here a couple museum. This is a historical museum, and the next building, the Magdeburg Palace, is an unbelievable art museum. Among the people who were brought here were hundreds of accomplished musicians, playwrights, painters, sculptors. This was a teacher who taught the children and encouraged them to draw their emotions and feelings. She perished, she was killed in 44 in Auschwitz, but she was hiding the paintings of the children in the attic of the Magdeburg Barrack. And that is what has led to the publication of this book, which is a must. I never saw another butterfly here. We leave Prague, we leave the Czech lands, we drive through magnificent countryside, and we go on to Vienna. That's where we begin seeing some of the most beautiful palaces where the Habsburgs used to reside, the Hofburg, the Schönbrunn, the Belvedere, and some of them have some magnificent gardens and parks behind them. We're going through it quickly, but visiting these museums and these palaces is a real experience. Very, very difficult to find such glory and such beauty and splendor anywhere else. Along, we also have some modern buildings. This is the United Nations headquarters in Europe, which is located in Vienna. The old city of Vienna, or the inner city, most of it was converted to be like a pedestrian zone with lots of galleries and art shops and cafes and restaurants. We have here the theater place and the opera house, and that is a unique experience to visit such places. The National Library is magnificent, the university is beautiful, and we come to see something very interesting. We're into the 20th century, the brainchild of a very eccentric artist. His name was Hundertwasser, Friedenhof Hundertwasser, and he said, why should it be like a straight line? Nature, I don't see anything straight in nature. So look how twisted and crooked the house is, and so are the floors inside the apartments. We come to where the Jewish concentration was, not concentration camp, but a place which was like, I cannot say Jewish quarter, but a large number of Jews lived in this part of the city. And right in the middle, they put this memorial to the Holocaust that looked like a sealed chamber, kind of a mausoleum with no inscription, but everybody should figure what it is. Across the street, we'll visit the headquarters of the Jewish community. We'll see the magnificent synagogue, a little unusual. You see it's built in a round shape. And we'll talk about what happens next when the Germans first annex Austria. Actually, Supposedly, they asked for a poll. Interestingly enough, 91% of the Austrians have voted for what was called the annexation, the Anschluss. And before you know it, the Nazis march into Austria and the looting takes place here as well. I believe many of you would recognize this painting made by Gustav Klimt, Dora Bloch. You must have seen the movie, A Woman in Gold, how after it was taken away from this family, a descendant of the family tried to claim it back from the Austrian governments, and she spent years in court until they were given it. Today you can see it actually in New York City. You go to the Neue Gallery on the Upper East Side, right off Fifth Avenue, and you can see among other Klimt magnificent works of art, also this Woman in Gold. Jews from Austria were sent to different concentration camps and death camps. Many of them were sent to Mauthausen, so people who wish to visit. We don't really force anybody, of course, to go there, but they can take a side trip. It's not a long way away, and see and hear the story of what happened there, the plight of the people who came there, and see the crematorium, which was used there also in Mauthausen. When we talk about atrocities, we should pay respect to the memory of the non-Jews who risked their lives trying to save the Jews. In this particular place, it was Consul Ho. He was the Chinese consul in Vienna. The embassy was in Berlin, and in his capacity as a consul, he issued transit visas and different documents, and he saved thousands of Jews from the Holocaust. So he is, of course, remembered with the greatest respect. Now we will see, as we walk in the street, we will see something which is very unusual. We call them the stumbling stones, and they really make you stop and read. Outside the houses where Jewish people used to live, they put, was an initiative of a German artist, a non-Jewish artist. He started it in Germany, and now it takes place in many countries all over the continent, up to Lithuania and other locations. And this is where he said, in this building lived these and these people. So we have the date of their birth and the day of their deportation, and there are hundreds and hundreds and more of them come along. The next destination will be going to Hungary. Now, Hungary today is a tiny little fraction of what used to be the Hungarian kingdom for almost 1,000 years. At one point, they occupied great parts of the continent into what is today Ukraine, into what is today Romania, and Serbia, Croatia, Slovenia, Austria, Slovakia, and so on. What is interesting is that the Hungarian language is still spoken in many other countries other than Hungary, because these borders were arbitrarily drawn in 1920. The contract of Trianon in Paris, in this beautiful palatial hall, they have subdivided the continent in a way that Hungary lost lots of its territory to its neighbors. That was something the Hungarians didn't forget, and that has also determined what happens next during the years of World War II. Look at the size of the Jewish population before the war, and look at how many victims. Nearly 500,000 of the Hungarian Jews perished in the Holocaust. They were mostly the country Jews, but we'll get back to that later on. Now, let us begin to explore the town itself. We said, as we heard in the movie, the town is made out of Buda, which is the castle hill, and Pest on the other side, on both sides of the Danube. Across from Pest, we see this magnificent building, which is the Hungarian parliament, probably the most beautiful parliament building anywhere, gorgeous to look at during daytime and nighttime. Going back to the castle, we see the Fisherman Bastion, right next to the Matthias Church. This is Matthias, and the church is absolutely beautiful. Look at the splendid roof tiles. This is a unique local emblem, a special factory specializing in these tiles which decorate and adorn dozens and dozens of buildings all over the city. Unfortunately, the city was destroyed in nearly 70% during the war, but painstakingly, lovingly, they have restored it to its former beauty, so we can come inside the Matthias Church and admire the beautiful decorations, the paintings, the stained glass windows, and the very inspiring architecture of the building. Again, we see these roof tiles, very typical of Art Nouveau, and these pictures are taken from the air. Isn't that amazing? They went through the effort of decorating also the roofs, even the domes where nobody could really see them unless you really hover above them. So it's quite interesting to learn about this artwork. We have these bridges connecting the both towns. This is the Chain Bridge. Across from it is the Gresham Palace, former office of an insurance company, now a lavish, beautiful hotel, the Four Seasons Hotel. And the city offers views at any time of the year, just beautiful. Next to the Fisherman Bastion, we have the National Palace. And again, a magnificent, most typical Austro-Hungarian creation with the beautiful chandeliers, crystal, marble, and the beautiful tiles and stones paving the floors. The courtyards are adorned with hundreds of beautiful statues, the colonnades beautifully illuminated at night and really highlight and expose very, very interesting, not to say unique, architecture. On the Pest side, which is the flat part of the city, this is the main cathedral, that is the main church, and not far from there, everybody takes a walk along Váci utca, Váci Street, which is a long, beautiful pedestrian street. That's where you have your shopping, that's where you have your coffee shops, and just walk around and watch the people spending their time walking into these fabulous coffee shops and the bakeries. And we take the road, or maybe you can take the subway. It's the oldest subway in the continent after London. I mean, even before Paris had a subway, Budapest had one. It was really dubbed for many years. It was dubbed Paris of Eastern or Central Europe. And we come now here to the Heroes Square, a monument to the founders of the nation. Here we have, you can see these images, and the riding Huns. Hungarians are the latest, almost the latest immigrants into the continent. The official date of the arrival of the Hungarian tribes who came from Central Asia is 896 of the Common Era. Right below this monument, it's a tomb to the heroes, but it's not the tomb of an unknown soldier. There is no body buried there. It just honors and remembers all the victims of the many wars that were experienced in this area. Look at these chieftains, the leaders of the tribes. Quite interesting story, the arrival of the Huns and the others in the country. On either side of the square, we have some museum. We have the Classical Art Museum and a Modern Art Museum, and the buildings themselves are also, you can see, so interesting and so beautiful. Budapest lies in a valley on the banks of the river, but the valley is in like a tectonic area. There is a fault line. As a result, there are dozens and dozens of hot springs, and that's a very typical pastime for the Hungarians. They don't have to have a special holiday, after work, before work, instead of work, outdoor, indoor, and look at the stunning, beautiful tiles decorating both the exterior and the interior of this bath. This is a very famous one, Széchenyi, but there are many other, Fordú, the other beautiful public baths with the hot water. Look at the temperature. They indicate the temperature, and that's the natural heat. It was not put to be heated. That's the natural temperature of the water. Maybe we continue walking and we'll come to the marketplace. Again, very European, very typical. Look at this interesting building, and inside we will find all the fruits, the vegetables, the produce, especially processed meat. Hungarians our top experts. I think everybody uses, I believe, the word salami and other Hungarian terms to call some of the smoked and processed and pickled and dried and whatever shapes and forms of meat. And that is a celebration, a real feast for those of you who care for these items. But not only that, it's where you come to get your paprika, the Szegety. Szegety is a town in Hungary specializing in the creation of the various degrees of how hot it is, sweet paprika, hot paprika, and others. Lots of culture here. This is on a par with Vienna and in some ways even rivals it. An opera house, an operetta house. That is something that I very much recommend for everybody. Even if usually you are not too keen and not too excited about going to the opera, you definitely want to come and spend a lovely evening, very vivacious performances, singing and dancing, and the staging is beautiful. So everybody leaves with a smile after spending a few hours in the operetta theater. For people who are into modern dance, they have just completed a magnificent modern building housing the Modern Das Theater. And now we come to Jewish Budapest. Jews were not allowed into town for centuries. It was only towards the end of the 18th century and early 19th century that they have removed the restrictions and Jews moved to be close to town, but still they stayed on the other side of the ring road. And that is where we'll visit first the Jewish Museum, showing us magnificent artifacts from dozens and dozens of communities. Remember, there were hundreds of thousands of Jews living in this country, one of the largest Jewish communities in this part of the world. Unfortunately, as we know, most of them perished. However, the Jewish quarter nowadays, that is where everything happens. That's where you have the hip and hop and hype, where you have the bars and restaurants and funky and experimental and offbeat and hip hop and whatever. All these contemporary events take place in the Jewish, former Jewish quarter with galleries and graffiti and murals. Beautiful art scene takes place in what used to be once beautiful. You can see some of the buildings could use a little more than a pint of paint, but you can just imagine how beautiful this building must have been 100 years ago. Synagogues in Budapest are named after the streets where they are located. So this is, for example, the Rumbach Street Synagogue. This is the Dohany Street. Dohany means tobacco. Probably this is a place where they used to sell tobacco, and a big, magnificent synagogue was built here. It was built in the middle of the 19th century, and it represents a very unique school, if I may say, in Judaism. This is called Neolog. They are somewhere probably today between Orthodox and conservative, but when they showed up and they built these beautiful synagogues, and inside there was an organ, oh my goodness, that was such a revolution. Some people would never ever set foot in there because it was so contemporary and so gorgeous. It is the second largest synagogue in the world, just a couple inches short of the one in New York City, Temple Emmanuel. So definitely a unique experience. Right outside the synagogue, we have a smaller prayer halls. This was used by the veterans who returned from World War I. And right next to it, we have a Holocaust memorial. The name of the square is Raoul Wallenberg Square. And this tree is like a willow tree, and the branches and the leaves are made out of metal. It's the brainchild and the result of the efforts of Tony Curtis, whose father was born in Budapest. He is of Hungarian descent. And people come and they can write the names of the relatives who perished, or friends or acquaintances who perished in the Holocaust, on these metal leaves. And they keep adding more and more branches and more leaves with tens of thousands of names. I mentioned the name of the square is Raoul Wallenberg, and you can see on the floor a memorial featuring his name in big fonts, but we have the names of many other people. Hungary was an exception to the rule. By 1943, there were hardly any Polish Jews, say. In Poland, there were 3.5 million Jews before the Holocaust. 3 million of them were killed. Overwhelming majority of them between 42 and 43. In Hungary, the Jews remained pretty much intact. They did introduce laws, anti-Jewish laws, restricting and limiting them in the amount of students that can be in the classroom, the kind of professions they can use. They were recruited and were sent to the army. Hungary collaborated with the Germans. So thousands of Jewish soldiers, imagine, were fighting alongside the Germans in Russia, and many were killed there. But the government did not cooperate with the Germans in sending the Jews to the death camp. So they remained pretty much intact. As I said, not in a great shape, but at least alive. And then when Germany was losing the war, the Hungarians realized they are again betting on the wrong side, as they have done before. And all of a sudden, they stopped cooperating with the Germans. So it was in the spring of 1944 that the Germans have deposed the leader, the prime minister of Hungary, and the different government officials, and Germany officially occupied Hungary. And that's when they started the deportation of the Jews from the countryside. And that's where they have gathered the Jews of Budapest into ghettos. And this is where a unique phenomena happens. Different diplomats in Budapest, following the example of Raoul Wallenberg. We talk about the diplomats having saved over 100,000 Jews of Budapest. So Wallenberg saved tens of thousands by giving them the papers and special houses. And this is Karl Lutz. He was the Swiss diplomat. Switzerland was neutral during the war, and he was able to issue certificates. And look at the monument. Looks like an angel who comes down extending some kind of a mantle, some kind of help to the wounded person on the floor. A very moving memorial. Another person to be mentioned is Angelo Rota. He was a Monsignor. He was the head of the Catholic Church in Hungary, and he issued almost 8,000 baptismal papers. He never baptized a single Jew, but he issued these documents. Supposedly, these Jews were baptized and they became Catholics, and hence, leave them alone, take your hands off. And then we have the names of a few more diplomats. They were from Uruguay, they were from Spain, from Portugal, from different countries. The amazing one was this diplomat who has issued thousands and thousands. He represented the Spanish embassy, but at one point, Spain again realizes things are not going to be too great, so he had to close down the embassy and leave for Spain. At which point, something unbelievable happens. This was Giuseppe Joseph Perlasca, an Italian who was a small-time, what shall I say? You know, he was profiting in some ways from the war, some deals, some of them darker than the others. Like what Schindler, if I may use the comparison, like Schindler was in Krakow, that's what Perlasca did in Budapest, except that when he saw the locked gates of the Spanish embassy, he sneaked inside, opened it, presented himself as the Spanish ambassador, and started again issuing thousands and thousands of documents and protection papers to thousands of Jews. This is a movie, by the way, that I recommend very much you see, based on the true story of Perlasca and the way he helped save the Jews. He issued documents, and this one was also given by the Portuguese consulate, and this meant like a passport. These were like protection paper. If you carried this document, even though you had a name that would be questionable, but you had a document, so you were protected by these documents. Unfortunately, it did not help at the end to many people. A Holocaust memorial was erected here, and this is the most moving of them all. Now we are in January 45. For many months following the arrival of Raoul Wallenberg in the summer of 44, He acquired 30 houses where he put the flag of the Swedish crown, and he put the people there, and he gave them these Schutzpapieren, the protection paper. But now that the Hungarian government changed, now we have somebody who cooperates with the Nazis. He's a puppet governor, and the people underneath him find a way to express the most hidden sense of anti-Semitism or sadism or whatever you will call it. So all these people who for the longest time were protected by the paper, so now the people who belong to this fascist party, they were called the Aerocross. They will stop the Jew in the street and say, your paper, he says, here, this is my protection paper. They said, sure, and they would tear it and they would arrest them, and they led them to the banks of the Danube. Remember, this is January 45, the coldest winter in recorded history. They made the people take off their clothes, their shoes. They would tie 3 people at one time and made them stand on the embankment and shoot the center one, which of course will immediately fall into the water. The others will die of hypothermia within no time. And that's how thousands of the Budapest Jews were killed, not by the Germans, by the Hungarians. You might have seen the movie The Music Box, and there were many movies made about it. But this is a very moving monument because it is the shoes. Like these people are gone, but before, as I said, they were killed. They were made to leave their shoes right there on the banks of the river. And that's where we come and pay respect and remember them and talk about their plight. Some people will light a candle. Some people will bring a flower. Many people will bring small pebbles, which is, as you might know, a Jewish tradition. When you visit a tomb, you put these small pebbles to show respect. Of course, we cannot save any of these people. We cannot visit their tombs. God knows what they ended up being. And today, during ceremonies, this lady is a minister in the government of Hungary, lighting a candle, a memorial candle, and putting the flower with the Hungarian flag. So it's a very upsetting and very sad monument. The Germans set up a ghetto where they rounded up along with the Hungarians, and we visit the remains of the ghetto, an actual wall and a fence from the ghetto time. And look at the figures. You might remember the Wannsee Conference, January 20th, 1942, 15 of the leaders of the Nazi regime gather in a beautiful villa that belonged previously to a Jewish family, a Jewish banker. And it was a gorgeous, cold Sunday, sunny and beautiful. And that's where they have discussed what they called the final solution of the Jewish question. This is where they tallied the number of the Jews in various countries of Europe. Look at how many did they find here. One of the largest numbers, of course, was in Hungary. And that's when they start in 44 shipping the Jews from Hungary to Auschwitz. All these famous pictures, you know, from Auschwitz were mostly done by the Hungarian Jews for the Hungarian Jews who were brought. You see, before this railroad was built into Auschwitz, the people who were brought to the camp would have been taken off the train a little less than a mile away in a side track of the train and walk to the camp. But now that they're bringing hundreds of thousands, everything within a few weeks, they needed to bring the trains inside, and that's when you have the tracks. So this symbol of Auschwitz really relates to the last 8 weeks of operation of the camp. You know how the Jews were brought in, were sent to be selected, and overwhelming majority of them were killed upon arrival. To go to a little happier note, we'll take a side trip to Saint-André. Saint-André was a village which was built by refugees who came from what today would have been Serbia and the nearby communities of former Yugoslavia. And the artists of Budapest liked the atmosphere of this place very much, and it became an artist village with the cobblestones and the unique architecture, the narrow lanes, and everything is nestled right along the Danube. And that's where lots of artists came, among them many Jewish artists. My favorite one, and I really hope you'll be able to visit her museum, is Margit Kovacs. She did really beautiful stuff, from family scenes, mother and daughter, to nature, to Greek mythology, and lots of other concepts. Another couple who lived in this village, and the museum is still there, is Amos Imre and Margit Kovacs. Unfortunately, she was not Jewish, she survived. He was Jewish, and he was taken in 1944 and killed in the war. To remember the hundreds of Jews who lived here, many of them were the prominent artists, they built here a small building, which is probably the smallest synagogue in the world. Cannot fit more than a couple, maybe 6 or 8 people. I don't think you can even put 10 people inside. But it's a novelty, the smallest synagogue in the world, the first synagogue to be built in Hungary after the Holocaust. And outside we have a memorial listing the names of the Jews from this community and the nearby communities who perished in the Holocaust. I've concluded my presentation. I could have carried on for much longer, but I had to look at the time and limit myself to this presentation. And who takes over from me now?
Well, I'm going to step in right now. First, let me just say, Jacob, what a touching presentation. And yes, I could listen to you for hours. I guess I'd have to go on a tour with you to hear the rest of the stories. Very emotional on parts of it, and of course, very historical. And I think if anybody has any lineage or clients that have any Jewish lineage in their family, that this is a must take trip. So thank you for sharing just a piece of what I know could have been 4 or 5 hours of really engaging to the experience in those destinations. What I'm going to bring up next will be Alida Poljavec, as well as Zahava Baton. They're going to talk just briefly about our luxury small group departures that we have that feature these 3 destinations. And keep in mind that while we have the LSGD product, which is a specific itinerary, we provide a lot of free time to provide options to experience the other areas that would be of most interest to everybody. It's kind of a hybrid product is what you'll find, where it provides the opportunity to see the main features and attractions of a destination, some of the off the beaten path as well, but also free time to be able to go explore and have some organic experiences. So with that, I will turn it over to Alida Poljavec and Zahava, and if you can hit the next slide, and I'm sure Alida will take it from here. Thank you again.
Hi, hello everyone. Thank you, Michael, and thank you, Jacob. That was really amazing. It took me back to those cities that it's been a while I haven't been. So thank you so much. It was really nice to hear all that information, and really amazing. 3 amazing cities. We call them the pearls of Europe. If we can move on the next slide, I will tell you just a little bit about our program that we offer within our luxury small group departures. This specific webinar was dedicated to the Jewish heritage. Our luxury small group departures are not specifically focused on Jewish heritage, but one of the things that we always incorporate when we set up these itineraries is free time. So our luxury small group departures, or as we call them, the LSGD, it's a luxury product. It's a small, intimate, guided, escorted tours with a maximum of 14 passengers. As Michael has mentioned already, we say it is a hybrid itinerary that incorporates visits to all the main attractions, that incorporates some visits and some experiences that are off the beaten path, that are a deeper immersion into the culture and connection with the local people. And the third factor is the free time. And even though this is a fixed departure date and we operate to global destinations throughout the world, we have always multiple dates to choose from. And what we also do is we try to have tours that can be combinable. So, for instance, for the tour that we will talk about today, which is Prague, Vienna, Budapest, it is combinable with Poland. And as both destinations are very interesting for Jewish heritage, if somebody would like to join this small group departures, they have enough free time to do and go explore and find out more about the Jewish heritage sites. If we can proceed to the next slide, please. So I will tell you just a little bit about the general, what we always include in our luxury small group departures, and that is that we always provide individual arrival and departure transfers with an English-speaking driver for your clients to arrive individually on different flights. We always have a professional tour manager, which is a local, which we handpick, and then we train them how to handle our groups. We have a welcome meeting and welcome dinner on the first evening, always with some really nice local dining with traditional dishes, very often also with entertainment. All the transfers throughout the programs are always performed with a luxury modern vehicle. And as I already mentioned, we visit all the major sites, we do off the beaten path places, and we put together these opportunities to meet locals and interact and have some dose of really unique cultural connection through our insider access. And on top of all of that, every program has free time in each location for the clients to be able to go out on their own and explore independently. And on the last night of the tour, we always have a farewell dinner. And this is, in general, what we always include. And we can proceed to the next slide, please. And we have our lovely program that we call the Pearls of Europe. And we have it for 4 departures in 2021. The first one is April 17. I think that's a wonderful time to be in Europe, as well as May. And then September and October. Obviously, we are avoiding the main summer season when it gets really hot in all of these cities. It's a very nice itinerary that starts in Prague. We can go to the next slide, and I will tell you just through a few bullet points of how this program is set up. It is 2 nights in Prague, 3 nights in Vienna, and 2 in Budapest. In all, always 5-star hotels, and we have really beautiful centrally located properties. We have visits that are mainly half-day walking tours in Prague, in Vienna, and in Budapest. And the rest of the time then is free for the clients to be able to explore whatever they want to do. So if you do have clients that are interested in Jewish heritage, of course, we can arrange for an expert guide to be with them, or just to give them ideas where to go if they prefer to do it on their own. We have very interesting and authentic included dinners. We have a welcome dinner in Prague with a folklore performance. And then in Vienna, I think that will be an amazing evening. It's a formal dinner. Then with the horse carriage, we have a transfer that takes the clients to a classic Johann Strauss and Mozart concert, which is definitely an experience to have in Vienna. And then in Budapest, we have the Danube dinner cruise, which is also a great experience to see all those illuminated buildings, including the parliament, from the river. And it's also a very delicious one. And then the farewell dinner, it happens in a Hungarian csárda, which is also a very special experience to have in Hungary with their traditional goulash and a lot of fun and live music. And off the beaten path that we have on this specific tour is in the Czech Republic. We stop in Telč. Actually, on the way from Prague going to Vienna, we have a stop in Telč, which is an architectural and really an artistic marvel to visit, a lovely stop. And then in Austria, we also have a half day that we do an interesting tour, take them to the valley of Dürnstein. I'm never sure how to pronounce that city. And then from Dürnstein, they cruise to the town of Melk, which is also something that is really unusual to have as part of an escorted, of a guided tour. And then in Hungary, we spent the last morning of the tour in Lake Balaton, called the Hungarian Sea, also the largest body of water in Eastern Europe. So this is a very different and special day that they get to spend in Hungary. And also there we have this wonderful farewell dinner in a typical Hungarian csárda. So this was just short to tell you about our luxury small group departures that we have for this amazing 3 cities. And I believe that is all that I have to say. As a Chava, I will...
Yeah, thank you very much. I'll be very short and brief. First of all, thank you, Jacob, for an amazing presentation. For me, it's a deja vu since we used to work together leading Jewish heritage tours to different parts of the world. I just want to say that we as a company, we are here for you, travel agents. Please use us as a resource. You know, today Jacob is having a second webinar at 7:30 Pacific time. One of the travel agents had reached out to me and said, hey, listen, I have one of my clients is a big temple in Florida, and I would like to do something for them. And then we came with the idea that Jacob will do a presentation to the temple. They actually have 5 different temples joining them. And not only that we will provide a presentation by Jacob, we will also provide a suggested tour in July where Jacob will lead the tour as scholar in residence. So this is part of what we do, and we cooperate with travel agents. It doesn't mean that it's only this specific idea. There are many ideas out there. Please feel free to communicate with us. We are here for you, to assist you and to help you to really be out there with your client to make the right, I would say, decision to who to use and the ways that we can help you. Once again, Jacob, thank you so much for a great presentation. I already got few text messages that saying that it was one of the best webinars they have participated. And now I think that we can go for the questions.
Yeah, just before we get to the questions, we'll have Alita take the lead of that. Let me just piggyback on some of the thoughts that you shared there. You know, with having the tour, traditionally the tour would start in Budapest, go to Vienna, and then end up in Prague, as Jacob has and us we have talked about. This was done in a particular way because of the way we build the LSGD products. It allows you to connect onto other sensible tours that are easy to connect to. So that's the reason why in this order. But let's also bear in mind that by coming to Prague first, which is really one of the jewels of the Jewish history and heritage, we can create a pre-visit. So you can come into Prague 3 or 4 days ahead and have something established specifically for the Jewish heritage, in addition to then joining the LSGD. And the same thing on the back end when you're in Budapest, where you can extend it 2 or 3 nights if you like to customize it for specific experiences. So we can, again, this is part of that hybrid, not just within the LSGD product where you have freedom to go out, but also to come in early and stay a little later as well to kind of try to experience some more deep-rooted and more specific needs that your clients might have. Also within the LSGD itinerary, where there is free time, we can arrange ahead of time. It doesn't have to be spontaneous. So the LSGD provides the specific tours and experiences, But within those days where there's free time, our team can also build in some of the extra add-ons, if you wish, for your client to go and experience, maybe where the whole group wouldn't, but maybe your clients would, to go experience some of these Jewish heritage locations and experiences within each one of the destinations. So I just wanted to express that in addition to what Zahava mentioned and Alita mentioned in regard to being able to customize, being able to structure and identify so that this really meets not only your needs, but the needs of your clients, because those needs are varied. And not everybody has the same idea in terms of how they want to visit a destination or what's important to them. So the LSG provides more of a platform itinerary to get to that destination, and then we can build within it and around it for your clients. Okay, with that, let's go with the questions.
Thank you, Michael. Yes, that was a great piggyback. So we had a lot of comments in the Q&A section where you guys were thanking us, and comments like, perfect, thank you, this was so touching. Then we had some really nice comments also in the chat section, very nice. My husband and grandfather were Jew. My husband's grandfather was a Jew from Hungary, but he was born in the 1800s and came to America in the early 1900s. So we had also very moving and interesting session. So more than questions, we had a lot of very nice comments. And I would like to thank you guys for joining us and listening to this wonderful presentation. And now just a few questions here. Zahava was also active and answering. So some of the questions were already answered, but I will just go through and read them. So do you include tours of Terezin from Prague? And of course, I can take this one. And if we are customizing a program for anyone, we can include absolutely anything that the clients would want. This is our specialty. We customize travel according to the client's wishes. So yes, absolutely, the answer is yes. Then we have here a question that I believe Jacob will be able to take. Who is in charge of maintaining all these Jewish monuments and sites?
So in different countries, different entities, usually it's a cooperation between the Jewish community in those places and the government, whether it's the Ministry of Culture or Ministry of Education, and some private foundations which see it necessary to support and maintain and preserve and enrich, and also incorporate lots of outreach. We use these sites and establishments as educational tools. We like to bring kids, we like to bring students, teachers, police officers, soldiers, whoever, and to promote not only knowledge about the past and the present, but to use it to promote tolerance, respect, acceptance, and so on. So there is always big time activity revolving around all of these monuments that we mentioned.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jacob. Next question is, I will read the complete one. Amazing and very, very sad to see at the same time. In general, when you organize these tours, it means that all the museums, synagogues, cemeteries, etc., are open for the clients to visit and take pictures, correct?
Absolutely, absolutely. Unless they restrict you for whatever reason, otherwise you're welcome to take pictures and to record. Today, of course, you can set your smartphones not to use flash, so there is no problem in overwhelming majority of the places, no problem to take picture.
Thank you so much, Jacob. And with that, we are done through all the questions. If anyone has any last minute question, feel free to drop it in here. Oh, there it is one. I understand March of the Living or other tours go to Poland and not Hungary and other. This should be mentioned. My kids wants to those school trips.
So, right, the March of the Living commemorates that awful march when the Germans were losing the war. They were closing down their plants and the camps in various countries around the continent, in Poland, in Austria, in Romania, in Lithuania, Latvia, and whatever. And that's when they were marching Jews, literally marching them to Germany, which was devastated and bombarded some of the places back to the Stone Age. Somebody had to clear the rubble. So hundreds of thousands of Jews who survived somehow through the period of the concentration camps and the death camps were marched to Germany. So March of the Living does something to symbolize that was the March of Death. Now we do March of the Living. We march for 2 miles from Auschwitz I to Auschwitz to Birkenau on the Jewish Holocaust Memorial Day, Yom HaShoah, and about 10,000 to 18,000 people will participate. And then we fly to Israel to celebrate Israel Independence Day in Jerusalem. Now, these tours that we offer here can be done in combination, in conjunction with the march or any other school trip. We will gladly create school trips, again, not only to these areas, but in the same format of the March of the Living in Poland, in Ukraine, in Belarus, in the different countries of Europe. We can do this Jewish-themed, historical, factual, along with, tourism to admire and to enjoy and to be impressed by what these countries have to offer.
Thank you so much, Jacob. Here we have another 2 questions. Irene wanted to know, how do you transfer the tourists from Prague to Vienna and to Budapest? And I can take that one for you, Irene. It all depends. If you have a couple or a family, we would arrange private transfers for them. If they join a group or we have a closed group or they join an LSGD, then it's normally a Mercedes Sprinter or something similar, a luxury vehicle that is up to 19 seats or something like that. Obviously, if you would have a big group, then we would have a coach. It all depends on the number of the passengers. Next, we have another. Okay, so Birthright is also one of them. I used to do groups, but different ones for voluntary work, and never it is suggested to make a stop en route for X. Czech airlines used to fly direct from Montreal, but since they canceled their operations, not much demand. I'm not sure if I understand the question here. And we have another one that may be here. My husband is born in Romania, but nothing planned there, said, and nothing kept there, if I understand. I believe that the question was toward the Jewish heritage in Romania, which I believe there is some. Jacob, would you be able to help us on this one?
Absolutely. There is plenty of Jewish heritage. It was home to hundreds of thousands of Jews. Again, unfortunately, it's a sad story. Many of the Jews were killed there by the local fascist militia alongside with the Germans, and there is a whole set of camps which are called the Forgotten camps, the Transnistria area, and we can gladly, or I shouldn't say gladly because we are dealing with sad things, but willingly we will put together a Jewish heritage trip for you in Romania as well, whether it's on FIT base or small groups or families. Some people are still going, a lot of them, to retrace the routes into the different towns, whether it is Bucharest or Ias or different areas, especially in the Transylvania area, in the Timișoara. Munkac today is a little out. It's in the territory of Ukraine, but plenty in Romania itself to be done with Jewish heritage, and that's one of the things we specialize in. So we'll gladly put together a Jewish heritage trip for you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jacob. It's amazing the amount of your knowledge. You are really fascinating.
Thank you.
You're welcome. We have a message here also from Celine that is asking about that. Okay, Celine, thank you for that. We will get in touch, but we are, Celine was suggesting that she has a community in Montreal who does groups, and we would love to assist you with that. Absolutely. Just let us know and we will set up any proposal that might be interesting. And then we have another question here. This one would be for you, Michael, I guess. Do you have published prices on set itineraries?
We do. So if you go online to our luxury small group departure link, you'll see our LSGD products. The holiday packages have pricing on them. We just completed the e-brochure for all the departures in 2021. We can provide those, and then you can reach out to Alida or Zahava. I know we can't see the screen right now with their contact, but it's either A. Paljevec, so that's the letter A, P-A-L-J. Yeah,
I will put it in the chat, Michael.
Or to Zahava Baton, and they will send you a separate price sheet that has all of it. Being that our website is open to the public as well as the travel agents, we make sure that it supports all the travel advisors' needs without exposing too much information to the consumers other than destinations, programs, products, and how we approach travel and education with videos and destination videos. Pricing is strictly provided to the travel advisors direct through just requesting, again, through either Alida or through Zahava.
That's right. So that's it. I don't see any more question in the Q&A.
Terrific. Well, there we go. Thank you all very much again. Thank you, Jacob, for participating and sharing your wisdom and your experience for those destinations. And I'm sure, hopeful that we will spend more time together and build our friendship like you had with my father, as well as with the company. Alida, thank you. Zahava, thank you. And again, for all those who are still on, thank you for participating. We hope you appreciated the presentation today, and we look forward to getting back to travel the day after. We're going to be ready. Stay safe, stay strong, and if there's anything we can do for you, don't hesitate to reach out to us. Have a great afternoon, a great evening, all of you. Take care.
Take care.